Flying in the age of COVID-19. We are joined by a flight attendant from one of the major world carriers. Welcome, Magdalena Osowska.
Very good morning. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Happy to join.
I think we can see through the camera. You've clearly got the personality for the line of work you're in, and
Well,
so
I definitely love my job. It's something that I've been saying from the very beginning to the point that I've never actually got called sick. I've been showing up for every of my flights for the past 11 years. Yeah, so definitely
wow.
loving
And
what I'm doing.
I think there's certainly a fascination amongst the traveling public or the public in general about this. Is it a dream job? Is it a nightmare? Is it both at the same time?
Well, it's definitely the both at the same time, and uh, I think yes, there is that perception that it's a dream job, and I actually this is the part that I concentrate on. I really do feel that I am living the dream life, but a lot of fellow flight attendants don't feel the same way. So yeah, but I'm just sharing my truth. So can I do this primarily because I love traveling and I love engaging with people. I love to have a positive impact on people's life, even if it's just for a minute. You never know how big that impact might be, or how small. Maybe it's just to put a smile on someone's face. So I benefit on so many levels from doing this job.
Yeah, and I think about the rise of some of the carriers, like the Middle Eastern carriers, of how many people you might be interacting with that it may be their first time traveling or their first time traveling internationally on a flight, and that little bit of patience. I can remember my early international travels were U.S. to China, and it would always be the first time Chinese passengers didn't realize that when they were on a US airline, it was not okay to ring the call button, because on Chinese airlines, you can ring the call button if you need something. And on the US carriers, you would get a very nasty look unless it was a truly life or death emergency.
Yeah.
And so I felt like that gave such a bad impression to so many people. This is their first, potentially first personal experience of America, that they're seeing these frowning flight attendants. Like, are you in pain? Would be their question.
Well, I am very used to call bells, and that's something that's ringing in my head for even many hours after the flight. People are not shy, but I definitely do deal with a lot of diverse approaches and travel experiences. We do have a lot of first-time travelers. I like when I operate flights to Saudi Arabia, where people are going for Umrah or Hajj.
Mhm.
A lot of them are traveling from Indonesia for the first time. They do not speak the language. They're very elderly. This is their first trip, sometimes out of their home, maybe city or village. So definitely, I have to have loads of understanding for them. But it's also very heartwarming. Sometimes I see when the people are actually coming and hugging me and kissing me when they leave the aircraft, or just expressing with their eyes that they are happy that they made it to the destination. So yeah, on a daily basis, I deal with a variety uh, of people, very different backgrounds, very different needs.
What is it like
That makes me
to
love
work
it.
an Umrah flight? That must be quite the experience to see people at such a profound moment of their life.
Yes. First of all, I know that people are going to be praying in the large numbers, and they are going to be preparing for the prayer. So they would be using lavatories, and they will be sort of bathing themselves. So for me, that means I'll have to attend to that toilet a little bit more. The people are changing the clothing. And there is a lot of a lot of groups, so they will all be dressed the same way, and behave in a similar way. So yeah, it's very, very, very interesting. Very interesting.
I'm thinking of that rush from flying into countries such as Iran or Saudi Arabia, where so many of the women, once it's near landing, they're rushing for the bathroom to make their outfits compliant. I imagine that's
Yes,
quite a
and on
competition.
the yes, and on the way from Saudi, when we are checking the aircraft at the end, there is plenty of the headscarves of the abayas left behind. So the women who are leaving Saudi Arabia, they're not planning to cover themselves anymore, and they just leave it behind. So yeah,
wow. That's
the secret too.
I'm not even going to pack it for later. That's quite a statement.
Yeah.
Talk about one of the fascinations I think with flight attendants is the how to get selected and how to get into this line of work. That it sounds almost like getting picked to be an actress in a Hollywood movie. And I've read different accounts. So people that are interested in men or women interested in this, what is it actually like to become a flight attendant?
Well, it's definitely not easy, especially for certain airlines. And I think I've got a quite a impressive story of not giving up, and story of the resilience, and also story that shows that you really have to, if that's something that you want to do, you have to keep on looking, you have to keep on trying. So I first wanted to become a flight attendant from our national carrier, Polish airline. When I was just writing my master thesis. I was just getting ready to graduate, and I thought, okay, I am going to join Polish airline because they just opened a Beijing flight, and I wanted to fly back to Beijing. I wanted to use my language skills. So I thought that is just perfect for me. So I went for the interview, and I was very welcomed. I was received with open arms. So I thought, okay, that was easy. Here I go. Case closed. But it was easy until it was discovered that I have a very bad eyesight. So I'm very short-sighted because I studied literature for so many years, and I guess that was, that was the negative impact on that brought the negative impact on my eyes. Anyway, so I couldn't work for that airline. And I went to, once I graduated, literally 2 days afterwards, I had a one-way ticket to London, and I went to London to pursue my flight attendant dream. And I attended 2 interviews. One of them I made it to. They said, "Well, just wait for the training." Another one I made it to the final interview, and then I wasn't picked I wasn't offered the job. But I thought, okay, once again, that was not too bad. Now I need to wait for the training. And that was in 2008, London, credit crunch. And that airline actually went bankrupt before I was able to join. So once again, I had to start over, and I was sending out the CVs. And eventually, after a couple of months, I got my current job. But what I'm trying to say is different airlines have different requirements when it comes to age, because that is a very frequently asked question.
Yeah.
In the Middle East, it's not being said black and white anywhere. But if you just look around, if you are actually on the aircraft, you know that majority of the flight attendants are going to be pretty young. The average age might be 26, 27. If someone is in the senior position, might be a little bit older. But that would be the average, because people are coming and going. It's a very different working environment than, let's say, Western carriers, especially American carriers. When there's a carrier for life, then you might have more variety when it comes to age. But if someone wants to become a flight attendant at, I don't know, 55, just a random age, that is still possible for many airlines. So you just have to keep on searching the one that will take you with the open arms. And when it comes to other qualities, well, of course, that like this funny, friendly personality, I think that really, really counts. Many people do concentrate on that physical aspect, only on looking like a model, having certain qualities, having certain measurements. But I would say the personality is always going to shine and outshine any physical features. However, with that being said, the grooming is still very important. And personally, and in my airline, I do work extremely hard and pretty much nonstop, and I deal with a lot of sometimes very serious or problematic situations. But what really helps me to attend with the professionals is that when I know that I am put together, that I know that my hair is in place, that everything is buttoned up in the way it's supposed to. It actually helps me to be more professional level. And I know this is a huge discussion within the aviation community, but from my experience, it actually helps me to, yeah, to be more professional.
It commands authority to see someone in a uniform looking tidy and professional, I would say, for sure. And
Yeah,
I,
a lot of people are saying, I don't have to look so polished and glamour if I am to save lives, etc. And by all means, that is true.
mhm,
But at the same time, if it's doable, if it's just goes down to combing your hair or
mhm,
having things in place, which is not that much of the effort,
mhm.
that you know you can still do it and still be safety professional, which is our primary,
Yeah,
our first title, first and
I'm
foremost.
not an expert. I think of the media reports about San Francisco and the Asiana time,
Mm-hmm.
where the flight attendants were Asiana is one that everything has to be immaculate on all of their crew, and talking about how authoritative the flight attendants were, in particular one, and how people responded to that and saving a lot of lives. Um, you mentioned about there's a focus on the appearance, but I think it's maybe downplayed just how physically difficult the role is. I mean, moving those carts. I mean, you think about
Absolutely.
walking up and down the aisle as a passenger, where you're just holding yourself, and then with the plane potentially in turbulence, the carts. I mean, it talked about
Right.
how important it is to be physically active, in shape, and how strenuous the work is.
Absolutely. You're bringing up a very, very valid and very important point. This is something that I personally, being 11 years ago, being so naive and
Mhm.
having that glamour image in my head, I was not aware how physically demanding this job really is. It's yeah, like you said, cards are very heavy, containers, even our suitcases to lift them up and down. The stairs. We are sometimes assisting the passengers with the baggages as well. So yes, and this is one of the reasons why, at least here in the Middle East, the people do tend to resign after a couple of years because they are saying their body is just giving up,
Mm.
that they are just too it's just becoming too difficult for them. But at the same time, if you have lived a healthy lifestyle, if you exercise frequently, then yeah, I feel full of energy. I personally don't feel the hardship of flying that much. So it's doable, but yes, you must pay attention to your body, to looking after your body.
I heard from one flight attendant, her secret is not really secret, but bringing her own food and not being tempted by the extra first class meals, and as a way to try to keep some kind of healthy lifestyle.
100%. Yes, I would say majority of us are bringing our own food. And as a matter of fact, if I go for the layover in Europe or even in US or Australia, I know that I'm gonna meet half of the crew in the grocery shops. Everyone is packing the suitcases and buying the food. We really very much focus on the nutrition, and we do bring a lot of food with us on board. Yeah.
And what are the kind of things you bring that it's easy perhaps to shop for nutritious and still has some flavor in air? What are the go-to food items?
Oh, well, I personally, but for a year, more than a year, I follow the plant-based diet. So I eat a lot of whole foods. Eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. Especially now, I regret not going to Europe much because now is started the season for the good fruits. So this is what we eat quite a bit: fruits, salads. I cook at home and I bring the cooked food on board. So nothing really fancy. I think my food is pretty boring, but it's nutritionally dense, and yeah, that's what really matters to me. So
Well, Ben Sand in the comments, he has a question related to
Yeah.
the pranks and antics. So, do any of you sneak a cigarette in the restrooms? I mean, there's smoke detectors, so it's got to be hard.
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm always laughing when I hear this type of questions because for most of the times I don't really have time for it, and I have so many other real problems that I don't really try to do anything of this sort. And the cigarette, anything fire related would be a big, huge, huge, huge no no. There is no joking about it. Of course, we have fun. It's a very, very, very fun job, and I get to fly with so many people, different people every time. So yeah, there's plenty of jokes. It all happens in the galley, away from from the passengers. But yeah, I guess nothing that you see in the like funny videos on YouTube, on Facebook. Yeah, well,
So are those
we would be.
staged, do you think?
Pardon me?
Are those YouTube ones? They're usually just staged for the recording.
Maybe not. I'm not trying to say we don't do anything fun. We might be dancing in a galley, or doing something. I don't know, but nothing like you see. At least that's what I know.
I read
Yeah.
a book some years ago from an American flight attendant for an American airline, and he said when they're doing the safety briefing, if it's not a video one, but an actual
Right.
in-person demonstration, look backwards, because he said often the flight attendants in the back galley will try to make the one doing the demonstration crack up laughing, and like his,
Yeah, that's very, very true. That's very, very true. As a matter of fact, we very rarely do manual demonstration, and if we do, it might be actually quite funny because we don't do it on a daily basis, so some mistakes are going to be made. And yeah, like I said, we do have fun. There's plenty of talks, jokes, etc., but nothing really that spectacular. Or also, I've been for a couple of years. I've been a cabin manager. So if anything is going on, they hide it from me. Okay, so I'm sort of the last to know. Even myself, I consider myself being pretty chilled, etc. But if there is something that is really should not be done, I think they would be hiding very well from me. So yeah.
that same book I read, it was whenever there was a flight attendant working their first international flight, say it was New Delhi or Mumbai, they would tell the flight attendant, "We have an urgent message for passenger Patel. Please request that passenger Patel ring the buzzer and come to the front," which would be like, 100 people on the plane might be named Patel.
I mean, I heard the funny joke for the first flight I heard was that the captain requested the newbie to take a bag and collect the air sample and bring it to the cockpit because he needs to test the air, or that they give the comp to the flight attendant and ask her, oh, just bring it to this lady over there, and the lady has like a huge messy hair, and this, the poor girl is offering her a comp. And the lady's like, "No, why are you giving it that to me? I didn't request it." So, yeah, little things like that.
Debjit is wondering, are we allowed to ask about the Mile High Club here? Have you had to encounter passengers? And what do you do about it if passengers are interrupted?
That is, of course, that's the question that I dread always the most, because once again, I've got a bigger problem. My answer to that is enjoy. I don't care as long as it doesn't disturb anyone else. But frankly speaking, I've never witnessed it, or because I've got bigger problems than that. And at least in our manual, there is nothing that says black and white, it's not allowed. But at the same time, there should be a single occupancy of the bathroom unless it's a mother and an infant, because they are two oxygen masks. But they are, yes, for the mother or the guardian and the child. So yeah.
And you mentioned you're a cabin manager now. Could you outline the different roles and progression?
Yes. So the first step is working in the economy class, at least in our airline, for and then you can progress to work in business class, and that depends on the demand, whether or not the airlines may be expanding its fleet, destinations, etc. So that can really vary. I became business class flight attendant after 3 years. After 2 years, I passed interview, and I waited 1 year for a training. And then we have first class, and then you can become a supervisor of the. You don't have to be first class to be that, but from position of the business class or first class, you can become a supervisor of economy class, and then cabin manager, so to be overall in charge of the aircraft.
So you're what in America we call the big kahuna or the top dog now. So
Top dog.
yeah, it's like you're the most powerful one on the plane. So
Yeah, in a way, but I also do work. I do work physically. I work in business class, and I deal with a lot of when there is prize to be given, I'm happy to prize, right, recognitions, etc. But if there is something wrong, then I'll be the one going and apologizing pretty much for everything. I think I actually joke that my job description is a professional apologizer. I can apologize for absolutely everything, from cargo to fog to misconnections. Basically, nothing that is ever my fault, but I will.
So when a passenger is so angry, they ask for the supervisor. That's you. That's
yes, and this is something that I do not want to hear, and I'm just praying. Let it be some sort of prize. Let him just tell how amazing the team is or that particular person. But yeah, well, yeah. But this is when I this is when I'm like, okay, do I look professional? And I'm going there and I listen, and sometimes you can turn around the situation, and this is very they're very developmental. Yes. So yeah.
And Ben is asking about how do you manage jet lag?
So how do I manage jet lag? I try to sleep a little bit after the flight, and that depends where I am. So if I am in some exciting destination, I really have things to see and do, maybe meet someone, maybe I'll just crash for 3-4 hours, and then I'll do whatever I was planning to do, and then I will go maybe to sleep again, and then fly back. So our layovers on average have just 24 hours. So that's not too much, and I have to manage the sleep in a way that I will be still able to sleep during night before the flight, so I can wake up in the morning and flight back. So that's definitely not easy, but I am managing pretty well because I think by nature I'm quite energetic, and also the food and the regular exercising really helps me to recover. But on top of that, on top of the regular work-related jet lag, I do oftentimes after the duty, after the night flight, for example, I come back to my apartment, swap my suitcases, and go for the leisure travel. So I go somewhere. Sometimes I jet off to the other side of the world as a passenger, and then I fly back. And the next day I put the uniform and I fly as a flight attendant. So I think I just take it to the next level. Every time I speak to my fellow flight attendants, they say, well, I don't know how you do it because, after the flight, I just need so many days to recover. I'm just dying. I cannot possibly think of being on the aircraft again. But for me, that's just another adrenaline rush. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess in some ways you're dealing with it by not dealing with it in the sense of, I find jet lag is hardest like the third, fourth day in a destination, or even the sixth or seventh day. If when I was working with multinational companies, I'd hear these CEOs always say, "Oh, I don't deal with jet lag," and some of it was just boasting, but also it was because they never stayed there more than like 8 hours, and they would fly right back, so they'd be physically tired there, but their clock wouldn't necessarily be shifted in the way that somebody that's staying for a while is doing.
Yeah. And of course, it also depends where you're flying. If I fly to US, I am able to do so many things on 24 hours layover. Like I visited the whole Manhattan on 24 hours layover, just on different trips, even though the flight takes 14 hours. So I basically spend more time within 3 days. I spend more time in the air than on the ground, but yet I'm able to do so much. Wake up like at 4 a.m. U.S. time, take the first train, go like to Times Square before it gets crowded. But the situation is very different in Australia. In Australia, I could sleep for 17 hours straight. I think this is my personal best so far. Yeah. So I can barely do anything. And also, it's quite funny when you are trying to make plans with fellow flight attendants. Like when in the briefing, everyone wants to go out. Everyone wants to meet and go for a fun trip. Then in the plane, some of them will say, well, let's see how I feel. Then on the bus to the hotel, they're like, I think I'm going to pass. I'm not quite sure. But there are still quite a few people who would sign up. And then when the time of the meeting comes, oftentimes you are just the only one there, in the lobby. Out of 5 people, they promise they're gonna be there. You call them, they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm crashed. I cannot, leave my room, etc." So that's very, very common. Because sometimes the jet lag will just surprise you.
How often? I mean, some hotels host multiple airlines. How often do you interact with crew from different airlines?
Well, I think you can interact when you are, maybe if you know in advance that there would be someone, maybe some friends, or I know the girl who was she's dating, her boyfriend is in another Middle Eastern airline, and they request the same destination, and he even proposed on one of the layovers. So if you know in advance. Otherwise, it's just the smiles. You just see them, you smile, you say, well, which airline are you from, if you're not familiar with the uniform. But there are certain hotels, especially those close to the airport, where you just feel like this is an overall crew hotel because there's just so many uniform people.
Fantastic. And Mehul was asking, how do you handle when passengers want to stay in touch? Whether it's friendly or romantic or whatever purpose they have. What's the way a flight attendant handles that?
This is very, 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 very tricky because obviously we are expected to be nice, right? And friendly and smiley, and that could be perceived, as being open to any advances. It's basically we are not used to say no to the passenger, right? Especially in the Middle East airline, it's more of like the person is still a boss, and especially when it's first class or business class, a little bit those guests from the premium zones. I guess it maybe sometimes some of the cabin crews, they say on board the aircraft, I'm always married. The moment I'm on the ground, I'm still single, but when I come on board the aircraft, I am married. So the simple thing is yes, I am married, or they twist the ring. They say, well, I'm sorry, I'm taken already. But many of them are, they might be interested, or they even, there is like a competition for the same guy. Yeah, like you try, you go, it happens. And also, I wanted to share the uplifting story. I've got one of my best friends. She met her husband on a flight. They got married. I even attended their wedding in Poland. So yeah, that could happen. I know more than one story like this. But yeah, it's I sometimes, someone gives me business card. Okay, I'll take it. It doesn't, but I'm not gonna give my number. So I think all of us, we've got a little collection of business cards and numbers, and
I'm thinking of these like white elephant Christmas parties where you share gifts people gave, you pass around the cards but yeah, I mean, I guess they're leading to career opportunities, all different kinds of things, and sometimes passengers just want a way to say thank you. And, that's an awkward transition to the snakes on a plane. So
someone asking about that
weirdest thing you've ever seen on a plane: animals, bugs, any those hunting falcons that you see in the Middle East? Have you flown on those?
Yes. Yeah, I can talk about the falcons because, as a matter of fact, falcons are the only animals that can be on board our aircrafts, and I've seen quite a few of them. I actually operated some special flights with falcons only, so only handlers and falcons, like maybe hundreds of them. So so yeah, those are interesting flights and very precious birds. What else? Nothing else. No, you know, exotic animals. Not really.
I see.
Again, this is the movies.
And then turbulence. Have you ever experienced any where you've really been concerned?
No. They're probably quite violent, but nothing to the point that, you know, things would be flying around and there would be some structural damage and there would be injuries. Not on my flight, but it happened in my airlines or other airlines, but not for me personally. But I do feel that a lot of people are very scared. You know, they people might be freaking out, but yeah, I'm fine.
And for those of us that are leisure travelers, and we'll start talking about your leisure travel, but what do you learn as a flight? What do you learn as a flight attendant that makes you a better or different leisure traveler?
I think I am very flexible and always looking. I learned to use my resources, because obviously on board the aircraft you've got a very limited resources, and sometimes you have to create something out of nothing. So I am very flexible and I easily adapt to the changing circumstances. And I travel most of the times, actually 99% of the times, I travel on a standby tickets, which means I'm going to the airport not knowing if I would actually get on board the aircraft, because and most of the times the flights that I'm trying to get on are overbooked. So I have to think about plan A, B, C, D. And oftentimes I don't make it to the destination. Like I tried twice to get to Micronesia via Guam, and I literally traveled from other side of the world. I was on duty flight from, I think, Düsseldorf, then here in the Middle East. Then I flew to the first time, but well, it doesn't matter. But Tokyo, then Guam, and then waited at the airport for I don't know how many hours, and then didn't make it to the flight, and had to decide where do I fly from here, and I decided to fly back to Tokyo. And again in Tokyo, what do I do? It's January, it's not a nice weather. Where do I go now? So I was standing in front of the departure information and I saw flight to Jakarta. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go to Indonesia instead of Micronesia, Indonesia. So I bought a ticket there. I didn't even have time to go to check-in counter. I was just at the security in the transfer area with the hand luggage. So I bought a ticket. I went straight to the gate. I asked, I didn't even know if they have seats. So I asked, do you have seats? They said, yeah, yes, we do. So yeah, next thing you know, I am on the plane to Jakarta, then Yogyakarta, then eventually Bali. But yeah, so I think being a flight attendant taught me that never to give up and look for the opportunities, and be flexible and be always prepared.
So suddenly you have to start considering visas and all that because you're flying standby. You're no longer on crew status, right?
Yeah.
And Brent he mentioned up, and this was a perfect transition to that. He said when I used to work for an airline, I found standby travel quite stressful, limiting and opportunities diminishing. Do you feel it will continue to diminish, and are you thinking of staying in an airline for the opportunity?
Well, I think this is a shared sentiment, that uncertainty. And I know there are a lot of cabin crew. They are saying, I cannot handle standby because it's nerve-wracking. I want to know that I would be getting to destination. I want to plan everything, etc. But for me, I've been traveling like this for 11 years. I actually circled the globe within 6 weeks with, I don't know, 25 or 30 boarding passes. And it was all standby. And I personally, I love the adrenaline. I actually love standing there in the queue, love and hate at the same time, standing there and trying to figure out if I would be able to get on the flight. Like when I was in October, I was going to Tonga again, with after the night flight to India, I went to Sydney, and I went on a jump seat. So
Mm.
flight to Sydney from here was overbooked. So all seats were taken, so I could only get a seat on the jump seat. And I remember sleeping like this for 14 hours, a 14 hours flight. And the people were actually next to the lavatory, with all this noise and cold. And people thought that that I died or whatever, because I was just hanging like this. But I got to Sydney. From Sydney, I flew to Auckland. And once again, all these flights were terribly overbooked. And in Auckland, I think the flight was overbooked by, I don't know, 50, 20, I don't know. 50, and I didn't have, because it's not my airline, it's flying the Air New Zealand, I had probably the one of the lowest priority. And the next flight was like in 3 days. And of course, I had already Wales pre-booked and prepaid, not refundable. So I was like literally standing like, and I was flying with a friend who was on a full fare. So if I didn't get on that flight, pretty much the whole holiday would be ruined. And the next flight in 3 days was also overbooked. So I understand that most of the people will be like, no, I'm not doing that. Like the risk is too big. But I don't know how, but I made that flight. And I danced out of happiness. I made that flight. I flew to Tonga. I swam with whales, and then on the way back again, on the way back, I had to again think of which flight to take. How should I fly? So I took Emirates from Auckland. Just fun story, because I came back to work just to do one flight to Germany, and then I had another holiday. So I basically had holidays, 2 days of duty, 3 days of duty, another holidays. And after that duty flight to Germany, I flew to Tokyo, another standby. And then I went to Okinawa, and from Okinawa to Hong Kong, and then back to the base. So that was like two weeks of my life, and most of that was on standby. And so yeah, I actually love that part. And yeah, I don't want to pay full fare like ever.
I think you alluded to an important point, is that you get travel benefits on more than just your own airline. You mentioned, I think, Air New Zealand,
Yeah.
Emirates, different airlines
Yes.
that you're able to
Yes.
fly.
Yes, this is by far, for me, this is the most precious benefit. But again, like you mentioned, for some people it might not be so precious, because, well, they cannot handle the stress. They rather buy full fare or whatever. But yes, I am so excited. I love trying different airlines. So sometimes when I'm picking a destination, I'm like, okay, there are 2 or 3 airlines that are flying there, and I haven't tried that one. So let me try. Uh, so yeah, I love that part too, that I've got different options. And also I love flying so much, despite being on the plane so many times, that oftentimes I'm thinking, well, let's make this journey a little bit more interesting. So instead of taking the direct flight, I will fly like four different flights, which is very environmentally not friendly. That's why I'm plant-based, just to balance it up, because I simply love. And also when I'm choosing to fly, let's say 4 planes instead of just one, I end up probably paying the same as people who go full fare, if not more. So I think I will still spend lots of money on that. And so many times, when I cannot take this plane, but then I have to reroute and fly like this and this, I end up paying, probably more than the full
That's
fare.
true.
But
It's not free. It's a discounted, and
yeah,
it comes
it's
out of your
heavily
paycheck, as I
discounted.
understand, for most airlines, right? That they deduct
Yeah,
it.
it's heavily discounted, but at the same time you still pay. And most of the times I'm just thinking one way, I'm like one way, and then on the way back, let's see what happens. But then when I'm thinking 2 ways, it's often as much as maybe some good deal on a full fare. But for me, it's a thrill. For me, it's about the destination, but it's also about the journey. Even this year, before COVID, I was on standby within the Caribbean. I was and also I was trying to figure out, how do I go there? And
I hope
till
it's
the
not
day when I was
standby
actually
on Liat.
flying, huh?
I hope it's not Liat. You could have been there for weeks.
Yes, it was Leon, and of course, and of course, at first I was thinking, okay, how do I go? Do I go via Istanbul, find something with Turkish somewhere? Blah, blah, blah. Eventually, I flew with. And where do I start? Do I first go to Granada? Do I first go to Dominica? But if I went to Dominica, I have to go to Paris Orly, so I have to transfer from Charles de Gaulle, blah, blah, blah. So I had just, actually, there I am constantly facing the problem with having too many choices instead of thinking, okay, this is maybe this is the best fare, this is my own, I'm sticking to that. I am freaking over the place for a week. Like I just said with the Caribbean, I was like, okay, maybe I'll go to here, maybe via Dubai, maybe fly from here, maybe go to London, maybe fly to Paris, maybe there's some other destination, maybe Madrid. So, planning. But anyway, I flew to Gatwick. Was it Gatwick? Yeah. And then from there to Barbados, from Barbados to Grenada, and then I was on the Liat ride between the islands, and it was so much fun because it was the first time that I was diverted mid-air, not for the medical reasons or not for any, I would say, well, reasons that I'm familiar for diversion, but I was flying from St. Vincent, was trying to get to Dominica via Barbados. And mid-air, the captain announces that we are going to divert to Grenada because the plane broke down there and there are some stranded passengers. So we are just going to land and pick them up. So we landed, and they announced that that I am not gonna make my connection, so I have to get off the plane, and they will figure things out. Okay, so I got off the plane. That they said, no, you'll be able to make a connection, get back on the plane. I already saw my suitcase offloaded, so I was like, okay, what about my suitcase? Okay, so I went back to the plane, and then they call my name, like, Miss Osowska, can we speak to you? And it's pretty much like equivalent of we need to talk in the relationship. So I know things are not gonna be good, and they tell me, I'm sorry, there are so many passengers stranded here and you're on standby, so you're actually going to be offloaded here in Granada, and good luck. So it's offloaded there, but then they put me on the plane again a couple of hours later to Barbados, from there to Dominica, then from Dominica to Trinidad and Tobago. Then I wanted to go to Colombia because my friend was dancing salsa there, and I wanted to visit. And from Trinidad, again, I was on 2 standby flights. One overbooked, another overbooked. I was supposed to fly either to Panama or Miami. And when I was getting on the plane to Panama, which was my first choice, when I got to my seat, there was someone in the seat. So I thought, okay, now they screw up some bookings. They put someone in my seat. They're going to offload me. And now I'm going to also miss the flight to Miami because they depart about the same time. So maybe I should have gone to Miami. But at the end, I made it to Panama, from Panama to Cali in Colombia. So yeah, sorry for the hectic description, but that's just wanted to say. This is pretty much how I travel. And this is part of my source of adrenaline. Yes. So but it's
that is incredible. And the like the Liat thing I was thinking of, I was delayed a few days in Dominica legitimately for storms, but then when they finally got a flight out and we were making a stop, and they were going to land in Guadeloupe, and it's like, why are we landing there? The passenger next to me was actually the chief pilot for the airline, and he was being flown in because he had to negotiate with the French authorities because a Liat crew on a deserted runway, there's no other flight in Guadeloupe, had crashed into equipment on the runway, and the French wouldn't let anybody except the chief pilot fly the plane out. And it was very nice. And I told them about how for storms, they had shut down their call center for several days. You couldn't even just get a phone call for a status. And it was amazing. A week later, his office called me in New York and said, we wanted to hear more about your feedback of the experience and that.
Wow.
So I actually have positive memories through roundabout ways about them. I've read many reviews of first class, business class, economy class. I've never read reviews of jump seats across airlines. So which airline has the best jump seat comfort, service, experience?
Well, they are all uncomfortable, and for many airlines, I cannot even get on the jump seat. So my, standby opportunities are limited. So
Mm,
there are certain airlines that I can get on the jump seat.
mhm,
And it's also with other airlines, it's a great experience. I observe other crew. That we get to chat. Even on one of the, okay, I'm not gonna get into another crazy standby story because I've got millions of them. But I remember instead of ending up in Vienna, I ended up in Brussels, and then I was supposed to go to Poland. And when I was on Brussels flight to Brussels, I was wondering if there's any availability on the flights to Poland. And one
mhm.
of the crew, she checked. She's like, "Give me a second. I'm just gonna check. How many seats they are for your tomorrow's flight." And she did, and I think then she messaged a person who was supposed to be on my next flight, and that flight attendant just saying, "Oh, hi, I just wanted to say hi, welcome you on board," when I got on the plane the next day. So
Wow.
yeah, it's brilliant to be part of this community, and of course to learn from each other, ask questions, etc. So, yeah, great
What is
experience.
something flying these other airlines? What is something you've seen that it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it's not done by every. And so I'm thinking of it. The first time I flew Korean Air, they have these stickers where you can put on the seat back in front of you, "Wake me for food" or "Let me sleep."
Right.
And it just seemed like that's brilliant. And why isn't every airline doing something that simple? And so have you had moments like that where you're like, oh, that makes so much sense?
Yeah, well, this is what I really really love to compare
Mhm,
the standards, the services, what's on the tray, and like I was amazed with Air Astana.
mhm,
By the amenities in economy class, they were giving the inflatable pillows.
mm.
This is the first time ever that I've seen it on the in the amenity kits, and the amenity kits, and especially for economy class. And there were a bunch of other things as well.
Mhm.
And when it comes to other things, like Air New Zealand does the refill of the wine with the bottles.
Ah,
That so they go with the they go down with white or red, so sort of tea and coffee. And I think this is the only airline. Maybe Air France does it as well, but I'm not sure. But yeah, it was quite funny because that also reflects the needs of the passengers, right?
and Air New Zealand has those beautiful wallpapers in the bathroom too. Like make it like a
Pardon me.
live. Air New Zealand has the wallpaper in the bathrooms. Like the like one I was on was like a library, one was like a ballroom.
This I cannot. I can't really remember this particular thing. But one thing that I've seen on Air New Zealand that was brilliant is that they have this part where I don't know how to call it, but you've got a leg rest behind your legs, so this is an extension of the seat, and you can lift it to create more space. So when you've got three seats, the outboard seats, you can create like the proper bed, so they
Oh yeah,
set it as
like the
such.
sky couch.
You know what
I
I'm
think.
saying, right?
Yeah, yeah. I've
And I
never
think they
experienced
they
it though. Mhm.
they come with you can book it with the duvet, etc. And I think it's a brilliant idea, really,
Hmm.
because you get a first class or business class comfort in economy class. I'm not sure what were the prices, and I have not experienced that, but I thought that was a really really great idea.
Yeah, no airline has copied it. I once thought Air France was copying it when I was on their on their seat selection online, and it said duo seat. And I looked, what is the duo seat? And then I realized they were just charging extra for people to have two normal seats together. So it wasn't.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of airlines do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Gil, one of the great frequent flyer friends of mine, he corrected me. It's Skybed is the product, and he knows airline products inside and out. So, and Jorge's saying we need to start the Century Airline Club for having flown 100 airlines. So you might need to be the chairman of the airline, Century
Oh
Airline.
yeah. Well, I I went. I've never counted. I'm counting the countries, but I've never counted how many airlines I've been on. But yeah, with my standby adventures, it's always nice to discover the airlines I've never heard about, like Air Tahiti Nui. I was
Mhm.
flying to French Polynesia. I'm like, okay, I didn't know this airline existed. They
Hmm.
offloaded me anyway. I was stuck in Los Angeles for 36 hours. So the
Is
first
it worse
experience
to be
wasn't so great.
offloaded for an airline crew than for a passenger?
Pardon me?
Is it worse to be offloaded when it's another airline crew that has priority, or for a passenger?
Um,
Or does it not matter? I feel
Probably
like if
for
it was me,
another
I
crew,
would be upset if it was the crew.
another crew, because it's a little bit like being selected for the as a finalist. You've got this bunch of people lining up, and you are not sure who is who. And sometimes there might be a parent of the airline employee, and you are not even sure, like, do I get priority as a crew of another airline, or do they get? And then you hear that, like, Mr. Thompson, and I'm like, okay, Mr. Whoever, la la la. And then they might say, well, unfortunately, we fill out all the seats, and you're like, man, so close. Or you get, like, Miss Osowska, you're the last one to be accepted. You're like, yes. So yeah, that's a
And
semi travel reality.
Devjit is asking about your thoughts about all the measures to mitigate the risk of COVID-19 transmission in planes and airports. Are you convinced about them? Do you think they're mostly window dressing to ease the minds of passengers?
So first and foremost, I want to say that my airline and other airlines, I see they go an extra mile to implement these precautionary measures. Frequent disinfection, which I also perform with a special spray and special outfit, with a very powerful agent. And of course, there's a social distancing between the crew and the passengers, and the service has been designed in a way that there is a limitation of the contact between humans. We don't attend to passengers as often as before. The food is covered, everything in the original packaging, etc., etc. But I think it's primarily to bring more of the psychological and emotional comfort. But at the same time, obviously, I don't have the virologist knowledge. And I haven't done myself too much of the research, so I can't really comment on that. But I think the psychological impact is the most important. But yes, but at the same time, these preventative measures are in place, and I'm a huge enthusiast of the air travel, regardless. So I personally am not scared to get on board the aircraft. I think I'm immune to everything after flying so much. I actually think my immune system is very good, but that's me personally. But yeah, hopefully things will go back to sort of normal. Maybe there will be still some measures in place. But yeah, in the long run, the aircraft is not social distancing friendly environment. I mean, it could be with little passengers, but then the airlines are not profitable, and in the long run, the airlines cannot ensure this environment, with fewer passengers, because that's not how the airline is making money. Or if they do, that means the passenger is getting charged more. So yeah.
It sounds like you're broadly optimistic, but things won't be easy, and there'll be precautions for quite some time.
Yeah, I am, like I said, broadly optimistic and unjustifiably optimistic. For some reason, I run on this optimism. This is how I survived being primarily on the ground for the past 2.5 months. This is the first time ever that I've been, I mean, maybe not, but yeah, for the longest time, this is the first time being on the ground, and I am just expecting the best. And, yeah.
And we of course, it's so easy to get lost in these wonderful stories of flight attendant life. But you've been to over 100 countries, and
right.
we've only obliquely touched on it. Michael had a question about your native country. So been to Warsaw, been to Krakow. What next?
Okay. Right. So yes, I'm from Poland. I was born in a place of birth of John Paul II. So I was born in Wadowice, and I grew up in a small villages around Wadowice, so in the sort of rural Poland. And back in the day, my family didn't even have a car, not even a bike. We were walking everywhere, and the only travels that I was excited about was infrequent trip to Wadowice, to the city, maybe 15 kilometers away from my village. There were free daily buses, and that's it. So that was me growing up. So nothing from my upbringing, was showing that I could ever go anywhere or see anything. My parents did not travel because, of course, they were trapped in a communist country. My mother didn't even have a passport. As a matter of fact, her passport was when when she was 60. And this is when she started traveling with me. I took her also on standby, like more than 20 countries. That's another story. But yes, so that was my upbringing. So then when and I was from a pretty underprivileged family, so I had to really rely on myself to get through school, and I was always very, very resourceful. So I was selling my old books, buying new books, typing them, and I was putting myself through school. And then during my time at the university, I was studying Polish literature. I met a Chinese guy. There's no romantic story before anyone, asks me that, because they always do. But yeah, well, I met a Chinese guy during my trip to the seaside to Baltic Sea, which was the only time that I've ever been to Polish Baltic Sea. Polish side of the Baltic Sea. So I met this Chinese guy, and he told me that he's learning Polish in China, in Beijing, and that he came for some sort of scholarship summer camp to Poland. And we stayed in touch. And I thought I'm never gonna see him again. I didn't even have a mobile phone back in the day, so it's just like a home address. Anyway, he then ended up coming to visit me in Krakow, stay with my family, etc. But anyway, after these holidays, I went back to the university, and I see this huge poster saying that you can learn Chinese at the university as a faculty for free. So I thought, okay, if you can learn Polish in China, I can go and learn a little bit of Chinese, probably just say hi, goodbye, thank you, and that's it. I'm just going to impress my friend. But it progressed from there. I thought, okay, it's actually not so hard. I can say more than 3 words now. So I really, really was getting into that. And at some point, I actually won the national competition for Chinese speaking.
Wow.
Well, this is another story. I wasn't that skillful, but anyway, I was well prepared by my teacher, and I won my first plane ticket. So I was selected to go to China to represent my country, and everything was covered, including the plane ticket. So yeah, I had to win my first plane ticket.
Wow.
And I remember everything that I remember from that trip was the flight attendant. It was like a gorgeous black lady with a beautiful smile. And I just remember her smile and personality. And probably that was the first time that the thought of becoming flight attendant one day crossed my mind. So yeah. And then when I was in China, I traveled quite a bit. And for those, I think many of you have traveled in China. So you know that this is adventure of its own. Especially when you are traveling during the peak times, which was when I was off from my university. So I remember standing in standing like a domino for 12 hours, I think, going to Qingdao. Then I traveled for 3 weeks across China, and I think that was the longest train ride. 48 hours. Probably now it's shorter, but I think I took the train from Beijing to, was it Kunming?
Kunming,
in Yunnan province. Yeah. So I think
it
was about 48 hours, if I'm not mistaken, because yeah, it's a large portion of China. And then travel, the buses. I went to Jiuzhaigou, where with I don't know if you've been there.
Northern
lakes. So yeah, this is how this is what I did also during my studies. And I've been to many other places I'm not gonna even name there. And after that, when I came back to Poland, I thought, well, yeah, I want to go back to China. I want to travel, and yeah, flight attendant jobs seemed like a perfect option. So yeah, you know the rest of the story. And then when I joined the airline, and they said, "Do you have any questions?" I was like, "Okay, when can we start using this standby tickets?"
And that isn't
And
the way to get fired immediately.
so I was very excited about that part, and of course I went crazy with all this standby travels. And at some point, I can't remember exactly when, I was like, maybe I can reach 100 countries, which would mean a lot um, to me as a girl who was born with nothing, who didn't really travel anywhere, who's not from a well traveled family. And I thought maybe I can do it. And so that was my drive. But I did that in a I think in a very inefficient way, because yes, it was all about flying from the Middle East, sometimes jetting to the other side of the world, like I don't know, going to Brunei for 3 or 4 days, and then going back, and not really visiting other nearby countries. But I also did some longer trips. I did 2 weeks in Iran, 2 weeks in Cuba. I did Uganda, Rwanda, Uganda road trip, Mexico, Guatemala, Belize trip on the road. So I travel in so many different ways. Anything from the crazy road trips on the bumpy roads to maybe I'll be like, okay, let's go. Let's jump on the plane, go to Mauritius. And I went with my friend, and we stayed in a beautiful resort, and we did like a parasailing and jet setting and jacuzzi bath in our living room. And yeah, so
I
and
think
also, huh?
I think we're going to have a dedicated part two of all these incredible travels. It's a tremendous variety, and it's not just what we have in, like you said, the flight attendant maybe 24 hours in Manhattan, partying or shopping. I mean, it seems like you've tried every style of travel. So we'll save some of that for part two. We've got a bunch of questions about travel
Really?
in travel in Poland. So it sounds like you don't spend that much time there these days.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry if because I of course drifted all the way to China from
But,
Poland. If someone was specifically asking me about traveling in Poland, I probably
so
you
been
as a
to
community, you
Warsaw,
travel more than I did.
been
Huh?
to Warsaw, been to Krakow. What next in terms of Poland travel?
Okay, excellent. So I recommend also Gdańsk. This is where I met that Chinese friend of mine. So Gdańsk, Sopot, which is in the north by the sea, very beautiful. And Gdańsk is also a very interesting history, because for the long time it belonged to, was taken by Germany.
Mm-hmm.
A very beautiful, very, very beautiful
Yeah.
city. Also Wrocław, Poznań, those are the major city seats. Zakopane in the south.
In
I'm
any of
from
those, you would pick specifically if food is your interest of those ones you mentioned.
in Poland.
Yeah, if food is your particular travel interest.
Um, for me, if I think our cuisine is not so diverse by the when it comes to from region to region.
Hmm.
However, in the south, in Zakopane, in the mountain, yes, there is more. There is a special type of cheese called ostypek.
Hmm.
It's made of the goat milk. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not from there, so don't quote me on that. But yes, anyway, so yeah, they might have some, or perhaps some other regions as well. But I don't know that much about Poland. I love the country.
Yeah.
I mean, I love visiting, but I haven't traveled extensively. I'm pretty sure that a lot of you've been to more places than I. But if anyone wants to, travel, then definitely Krakow, Auschwitz, not far,
Mm-hmm.
and Zakopane in the south. And then, yeah, it's I I'll be yeah yeah.
Hmm. Well, fantastic. And I almost forgot to ask. I saw Gil in some of the frequent flyers. We all use our miles to travel. So when you guys see the passenger manifest, do you guys treat us worse when we're flying on mileage tickets? And also, do the mileage passengers behave worse than the revenue passengers?
I actually don't have that information, so I don't know if someone is using the miles. But if someone is a frequent flyer,
Mhm.
especially with either my airline or the other airlines, there would be some sort of special treatment, but
Mm.
not that extended, So the first choice of meal, people will be more attentive, would be asking for feedback, taking it very seriously, etc. Um, so yeah, I don't really know if someone is using miles or not, to be
Mm.
honest with you. I follow some, like on Instagram, I follow some frequent flyers, and
Mm.
I'm so excited when they are sharing their feedback. Sometimes they mention the names of the people who I know, my friends.
Mm.
So and I also learn from them. So I see, and I even say that to my teams. I say, well, these people, they are very particular about every aspect of the service delivery, and make sure everything is properly presented, etc. Um, so so yeah, they are valuable source of information for me. Also, how I can improve and how can I be better and showcase our product better.
What are some of the Instagram accounts of frequent flyers that you follow for those interested in aviation?
Okay, so James Asquith,
Mhm.
okay, which who I think was featured here recently, right, with Pietra.
Huh?
I might mispronounce it. I'm sure you know him, but I might, and he will kill me for that. But I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
I
So
believe I've not
the
actually had the pleasure to meet him. I've heard him speak, and
pardon me.
I've not met him in person, but I've heard him speak, and I believe that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So yes, he's the youngest one to visit all the countries in the world,
Mhm.
and yeah. So and especially when he flies in the Middle Eastern airlines, and he makes some comments. I'm very curious about them, and even recently when he flew my airline, and I was scheduled for the flight, and he posted pictures of what the tray looked like. I was like, okay, so I have to memorize it because that's what it looks like now. I've got my materials, my updated guides, but I needed to see the actual picture. So I actually learned about the new service
No.
from his posts.
Huh.
Yeah. So another one is Gregston.
Correct.
um, Gregson. I'm not who. And another one is what are they? Gregson and Flight Hacks. I think his name is Samuel.
All right.
Flight Hacks. Yeah. So those are the people who I. Probably there is more, but maybe I don't follow so religiously, or I haven't been in contact. I haven't been exchanging DMs. Um,
All right.
so yeah,
I found
I
those
love.
three. I'll share
Hmm?
them in the comments for those listening along, so they can follow them. I'll
Yeah.
share your Instagram as well, of course.
Thank you. So yeah, those are the people who are writing also reviews, very detailed, very impressive reviews. I love when they are sharing what is important for them. So yeah, great source of information for me and inspiration. And when someone asks me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I say I would love to be a frequent flyer because I am a frequent flyer with no miles, no, I mean, other than standby privileges. I have no privileges. I've got 0 miles. I've traveled I flew thousands of hours spent in the air, and I've got 0 miles. So yeah, I would love to be a frequent flyer.
It's it's a different kind of addiction. I'll say
It,
I'm just this short.
I,
I'm just this short of 2 million miles on Delta, and this year
ugh.
I would have easily gotten my little recognition gift otherwise. So
Boy, well, it sounds like a dream. Access to the lounges, and sometimes the upgrades when I don't know, your class is overbooked, and oh my goodness,
yeah, I don't.
I
With
just
U.S.
love it.
Airlines, it's not so much a dream, but it is great for the problem solving that when you get access to people that have an attitude such as yourself, that they can find ways to get you home on crazy connections or whatever it takes that the regular walk up customers are not able to access in that way. So there's been plenty of family occasions that have been saved by people like you that swoop in and act as angels.
Yes, but with that being said, one of the things that I dislike the most is like, oh, this guy is whatever, he's platinum with us, and he says he wants this and that. He's in economy, but he wants a first class champagne and a business class this, and he says he, and this is what we are. We can't do that. There is a lot of restrictions on me. It's not, sometimes people try to bribe me or show me, like upgrade me. I'm like, I don't have these powers. I don't,
Well,
I
that was
tell
the
the
second
show.
half of my question. Do the people on point behave worse? So I guess we got the answer about the frequent flyers.
Oh yes, yes.
Yes.
So sometimes yes, it's of course, but I am. You don't know that I am. And yeah, sometimes
Do
it's
you
a
know who
big,
I
big
am? Yeah.
problem. Yes, or even I had a issue with a frequent flyer who says no one has come and introduced herself, like a supervisor did not come and say her name, and there was just an overlook. I was even in that position once because we changed the name of the frequent flyer, of the
Uh-huh.
certain tire, and it just, my brain was programmed on the previous name, so when I was looking for the passenger list I didn't see it, and it became like such a huge issue and complaint like, how dare you did not come and wish me a pleasant journey, etc. And I and managed to turn the situation around, but obviously uh, those are not pleasant moments when someone demands this special treatment and even things they are not entitled to, and it's really not the lack of the lack of goodwill from my side, but my hands are often tied. There
Yeah.
is only as much as I can do.
I feel so embarrassed when I'm around that, and I won't even put the luggage tags on that show the status because I've seen so many of those where people act so badly that
Yeah,
well, there's
sometimes this might be, yeah, problematic.
if it's confessional also because the on Delta the diamond tags and the silver tags look almost the same, and so I could also say that I'm really just being a horrible snob and I don't want people to think I'm silver. So you can you can take the good angel on my shoulder or the bad one for that interpret which way to go
No,
with it.
no, I love frequent flyers, but yes, the love is sometimes challenged.
All right. Well, it's an incredible time. As I said, we're going to have you back for no flight attendant talk, purely about all your incredible travels. You've tried every style of travel in the book, it seems. So thank you for joining us today, Magdalena, and we'll have you back soon.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I apologize. I'm a talker. I can talk endlessly and very hectically and chaotically. So apologies for that for those who listen. But thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.